2 words. That's all it took. 2 words from Sophie Cunningham to send the entire WNBA world into an absolute frenzy. And when you see what she called Caitlin Clark, when you understand what it really means, you'll realize we might be witnessing the birth of a dynasty that nobody saw coming. But here's the thing most people missed. This wasn't just a birthday message. This was a declaration, a statement. And for everyone who thought Sophie Cunningham was about to abandon ship, she just slammed the door in their faces so hard, the echo is still reverberating through every front office in the league. Let me take you inside what really happened. It's January 22nd, Caitlin Clark's birthday. The internet is flooded with the usual well wishes from fans, brands, and media outlets trying to capitalize on engagement. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? Wrong. Because buried in all that noise was a single Instagram post that stopped the WNBA rumor mill dead in its tracks. Sophie Cunningham, one of the deadliest three-point shooters this league has ever seen, a player whose free agency has been the subject of speculation for months, a player who expansion teams have been salivating over, dreaming about luring her away with massive cap space and fresh starts. She posted a photo, her and Caitlin side by side smiling. And in the caption, those 2 words that changed everything. Love bug. Now if you're not paying attention, you might scroll right past that. Just teammates being friendly, right? Just a casual birthday shout-out. No, absolutely not. See, this is where you need to understand how professional sports really work behind the scenes. Players don't post sentimental photos with teammates they're planning to leave. They don't create public displays of affection with franchises they're about to betray. That's not how this works. When a player is eyeing the exit door, they go quiet. They distance themselves. They start speaking in vague terms about exploring options and seeing what's out there. Sophie Cunningham did the exact opposite. She planted her flag right in the middle of Indiana. And the message couldn't have been clearer if she'd written it across the Gainbridge Fieldhouse scoreboard. I'm not going anywhere. But here's what makes this even more significant. Sophie didn't just say happy birthday. She didn't keep it professional and generic. She called Caitlin her love bug and wished her a powerful year ahead. That's intimate, that's family. And when you combine this with everything else happening in Indiana right now, the chemistry, the winning, the absolutely electric atmosphere every single game night, you start to realize that the Indiana Fever aren't just building a team. They're building something that could dominate this league for the next decade. But I need to tell you about the other piece of this puzzle. Because Sophie Cunningham's message wasn't happening in isolation. There's another relationship forming in Indiana that has people making comparisons to the most legendary duo in basketball history. And when you hear whose names are being mentioned in the same breath as Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston, Shaq and Kobe, let that sink in for a moment. 2 names that defined an era. 2 players who built a dynasty in Los Angeles that seemed absolutely untouchable. 3 consecutive championships. A dominance so complete, it felt like watching basketball history being written in real time. And now, people are whispering those same names in connection with 2 young stars in Indiana. Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston. I know what you're thinking, that's a bold comparison, maybe even ridiculous. They haven't won a championship yet. They've barely scratched the surface of what their careers could become. But here's what the doubters don't understand. Chemistry like this doesn't come around often, and when it does, you protect it at all costs. Watch them before any game, not during warm-ups when the cameras are rolling and everyone's putting on a show. Watch them in those quiet moments right before tip-off, when the lights are bright and the pressure is mounting. They find each other. Every single time. A hug, words of encouragement whispered that nobody else can hear. A look between them that says more than any press conference ever could. This isn't manufactured, this isn't some marketing team's attempt to create a narrative. This is real. And it's terrifying for every other team in this league. Because Aliyah Boston isn't just a talented player standing next to a superstar. She's the perfect complement, the yin to Caitlin's yang. While Clark is raining down threes from distances that shouldn't be legal, Boston is dominating the paint with a ferocity that makes opponents think twice about driving the lane. But here's what really sets them apart. Their confidence is infectious. When Caitlin hits a deep 3 and turns around before the ball even goes through the net, Aliyah is right there, matching that energy. When Boston secures a crucial rebound and muscles through 2 defenders for the putback, Clark is the first one celebrating. They feed off each other in a way that elevates everyone around them. And that's where Sophie Cunningham fits into this picture. See, great duos need a third piece. Shaq and Kobe had Robert Horry, Derek Fisher, Rick Fox, those role players who could step up in crucial moments and knock down the shots that mattered. Sophie Cunningham isn't just a role player. She's one of the deadliest three-point shooters in the entire WNBA. When defenses collapse on Clark, when they double-team Boston in the post, when they think they've finally figured out how to stop Indiana's two-headed monster, that's when Sophie gets open. And she does not miss. You want to know why her staying in Indiana is such a massive deal? Because without her, this team has a ceiling, a very real limit to how far they can go. With her, the ceiling disappears. But it's not just about Sophie. The fans know something that the national media hasn't fully grasped yet. There's a core group forming in Indiana that could become the foundation of something historic. And when you hear what the fan base is demanding from the front office, when you understand how vocal they've become about keeping this group together, you'll realize the pressure is mounting in ways nobody anticipated. The comments section is on fire. Every single post about the Indiana Fever right now has the same message echoing over and over again. Different usernames, different profile pictures, but one unified voice screaming at the top of their lungs. Don't break this team up. I've been covering WNBA basketball for years. I've seen passionate fan bases before. I've witnessed communities rally behind their teams during playoff runs and championship pushes. But I have never seen anything quite like this. Indiana fans aren't just hoping their front office keeps the core together. They're demanding it, they're flooding social media, they're tagging ownership accounts, they're creating hashtags that trend nationally. And the names they keep mentioning. Caitlin Clark, obviously. Aliyah Boston, of course. Sophie Cunningham, we've already established why she's crucial. But there are two more names that casual fans might overlook. Two more pieces of this puzzle that Indiana supporters understand are absolutely essential to everything working. Lexi Hull and Kelsey Mitchell. Let me explain why these two matter more than the national spotlight suggests. Lexi Hull is the ultimate glue player. She does the dirty work, the hustle plays, the defensive stops that don't show up in highlight reels but absolutely show up in win columns. Every championship team needs players like her. Players who sacrifice individual glory for collective success. And Kelsey Mitchell. She's been with Indiana since 2018. 6 seasons of grinding through rebuilds and disappointments. 6 seasons of waiting for this moment. And now that the Fever are finally on the rise, now that everything she's worked for is coming together. Imagine being told you might not be part of the payoff. That's the fear lurking beneath all this excitement. Because here's the brutal reality of professional sports. Salary caps don't care about chemistry, roster limits don't care about friendships, and expansion teams circling like vultures don't care about the dynasty you're trying to build. The Golden State Warriors learned this lesson the hard way. So did the Toronto Raptors after their championship run. Teams that seemed destined for multiple titles got dismantled by the cold mathematics of contracts and cap space. Indiana fans have watched it happen to other franchises. They've seen promising cores get scattered across the league because management couldn't or wouldn't find ways to keep everyone together. And they refuse to let it happen here. That's why Sophie Cunningham's message hit so differently. That's why 2 words, love bug, sparked a celebration across Fever Nation. Because it represented hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this core will choose loyalty over money, chemistry over opportunity, legacy over immediate payday. But fans alone can't make this happen. Social media pressure only goes so far. At the end of the day, decisions get made in boardrooms and negotiating tables far from the public eye. And there's one massive hurdle standing between Indiana and their dreams of keeping this team together. A hurdle that could change everything. A deadline that's approaching faster than anyone wants to admit. And what happens next could determine whether this Fever team becomes a dynasty, or just another what if in WNBA history. The CBA. 3 letters that most casual basketball fans glaze right over. 3 letters that sound like boring legal jargon better suited for lawyers and accountants than passionate sports enthusiasts. But let me tell you something. Those 3 letters will determine the fate of the Indiana Fever. The collective bargaining agreement, the rulebook that governs everything, salaries, contracts, free agency, The very structure that decides which teams can keep their stars and which teams watch helplessly as their rosters get raided. And right now, the WNBA is in limbo. The current CBA is being renegotiated. New terms are being debated behind closed doors. Player representatives and league officials are going back and forth on issues that will reshape the entire landscape of women's basketball. Until that deal gets finalized, nothing is official. Sophie Cunningham can post all the heartfelt messages she wants. Fans can demand roster continuity until their voices go hoarse. The Fever front office can have every intention of keeping their core intact. But none of it matters until the ink is dry on that new agreement. Here's what's at stake. The WNBA is experiencing unprecedented growth. Television ratings are skyrocketing. Arena attendance is breaking records. Sponsorship deals are flooding in at levels nobody imagined possible just a few years ago. And guess who's driving a massive portion of that growth? Caitlin Clark. The ripple effects of her popularity have touched every corner of this league. Teams that used to play in half-empty arenas are now selling out. Merchandise sales are through the roof. National media outlets that barely mentioned women's basketball are now dedicating entire segments to WNBA coverage. This changes the financial equation completely. With more money flowing into the league, players rightfully expect bigger contracts. They've earned it. They've built this moment through years of grinding, advocating, and excelling despite being criminally undervalued. But here's where it gets complicated for Indiana. When player salaries go up, cap space becomes more precious. Teams that want to retain multiple stars suddenly face impossible math. Do you pay Caitlin Clark what she deserves? Absolutely. Do you lock up Aliyah Boston? Without question. But what about Sophie Cunningham, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull? Every dollar committed to one player is a dollar that can't go to another. And expansion teams. They're watching all of this with predatory patience. New franchises entering the WNBA will have cap space that established teams can only dream about. They'll have roster flexibility. They'll have the ability to offer contracts that Indiana simply cannot match. Sophie Cunningham knows this. Every player in the league knows this. That's what makes her Instagram post so significant. She could have stayed silent. She could have kept her options open, played the market, maximized her leverage heading into free agency negotiations. That's what agents advise. That's the smart play from a pure business perspective. Instead, she showed her hand. She told the world where her heart is. But hearts don't sign contracts, accountants do. And until the new CBA gets finalized, until we know exactly what the financial landscape looks like, until official free agency begins and offers start hitting the table, everything remains uncertain. The clock is ticking. And what happens in those negotiating rooms over the coming weeks could either cement Indiana's future or tear it apart. But there's another factor that nobody's talking about, an external perspective that adds an entirely new dimension to this story. And when you hear what rival coaches are saying about playing in Indiana, opposing coaches are supposed to hate playing against great teams. They're supposed to dread those road trips, complain about hostile crowds, grumble about the difficulty of game planning against elite talent. But what Sandy Brondello said about Indiana, it was something completely different. Something that reveals just how special what's happening in that city truly is. For those who don't know, Sandy Brondello is one of the most respected coaches in the WNBA. She's led teams to championships. She's developed superstars. She's seen everything this league has to offer over decades of experience at the highest level. And when asked about playing games at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, she didn't complain. She smiled. It's a highlight, she admitted. Going to Indiana is a highlight of the season now. Let that sink in. A rival coach, someone whose job is literally to defeat the Fever, someone who has every reason to resent the atmosphere waiting in Indiana, and she's calling it a highlight. Why? Because of the noise. The arena in Indiana isn't just loud anymore. It's deafening. It's electric in a way that transforms basketball games into full-blown experiences. The kind of atmosphere you expect at championship events, not regular season matchups. And Brondello knows exactly who's responsible for creating that environment. Caitlin Clark. The following she's generated isn't just impressive, it's transformative for the entire league. When Indiana plays on the road, those arenas sell out too. When the Fever are on the schedule, television ratings spike. When Caitlin Clark's name appears in headlines, casual fans who never watched women's basketball suddenly tune in. But here's what's remarkable. Brondello isn't bitter about it. Neither are most coaches around the league, because they understand something that critics and haters refuse to acknowledge. A rising tide lifts all boats. Caitlin Clark isn't just elevating Indiana. She's elevating the entire WNBA. She's bringing eyeballs and revenue and mainstream attention that benefits every single franchise, every single player, every single person connected to women's professional basketball. The arenas are fuller everywhere now. The contracts are getting bigger for everyone. The respect is finally starting to match the talent. And it all traces back to one player who somehow managed to exceed impossible expectations in her rookie season. But Brondello isn't the only respected voice weighing in on what's happening with Caitlin Clark. There's someone else, someone who knows her better than almost anyone in basketball, someone who watched her develop from a talented prospect into a generational phenomenon. Lisa Bluder, Clark's college coach at Iowa, the architect of those legendary tournament runs that captivated the entire nation. The woman who had a front-row seat to Caitlin's transformation into the most electrifying player in women's basketball history. And what Bluder said about how Clark has handled the transition to professional basketball. It contradicts everything the haters predicted. They said she'd crumble under the pressure. They said the professional game would humble her. They said the league was too physical, too fast, too different from college for her to dominate immediately. Lisa Bluder watched those predictions with knowing patience, because she understood something about Caitlin Clark that most people still don't grasp. And when you hear her perspective on Clark's mental fortitude, transformative, that's the word Lisa Bluder used. Not impressive, not promising, not good for a rookie. Transformative. Coming from most people, that might sound like hyperbole. Coach speak designed to hype up a former player, the kind of praise you expect from someone with obvious bias. But Lisa Bluder doesn't operate that way. She's been coaching basketball for over 3 decades. She's seen countless talented players come through her program. She's watched prospects with all the physical tools in the world crumble when the spotlight got too bright. And she's also watched Caitlin Clark face pressure that no basketball player, male or female, has ever experienced at her age. Think about it. From the moment Clark stepped onto a college court, every single game became an event. Every possession was analyzed. Every shot was debated. Every interaction with opponents was dissected by millions of people with opinions they desperately wanted to share. She was loved intensely. She was hated intensely. There was no middle ground, no anonymity, no escape from the constant, overwhelming attention that followed her everywhere she went. Most people would break. Bluder knew this. She watched other highly touted prospects struggle under far less scrutiny. She saw talented players retreat into shells, second-guessing themselves, losing the very confidence that made them special in the first place. Caitlin Clark did the opposite. She got better. Not just as a basketball player, though that growth was undeniable. She got better at handling everything else. The media obligations, the public criticism, the weight of representing something much larger than herself. And when she made the jump to the WNBA, the pressure multiplied exponentially. This wasn't college anymore. These weren't 18 and 19-year-olds she was competing against. These were grown women, professional athletes who had been training their entire lives for this level, veterans who had nothing to prove and everything to protect. The physical play intensified. The hard fouls became headlines. The debates about whether Clark was being targeted or whether she was just experiencing normal rookie treatment dominated sports media for months. Through all of it, she kept showing up. She kept improving. She kept silencing doubters with performances that defied every prediction about her ceiling. Lisa Bluder watched from afar, unsurprised but deeply proud. Because she knew what most critics didn't understand. Caitlin Clark doesn't shrink in big moments. She expands. The bigger the stage, the brighter the lights, the more intense the pressure. The better she performs. It's not luck. It's not coincidence. It's a psychological makeup that separates transcendent athletes from merely talented ones. Michael Jordan had it. Kobe Bryant had it. And whether the comparisons make people uncomfortable or not, Caitlin Clark has it too. But here's what makes Indiana's situation so fascinating. Clark's mental fortitude is contagious. Her confidence spreads to teammates. Her refusal to back down sets a tone that permeates the entire roster. Sophie Cunningham feeds off that energy. Aliyah Boston elevates alongside it. The entire team rises because their best player carries herself like championships are inevitable rather than aspirational. This is what makes keeping the core together so crucial. This is what makes Sophie's Instagram post so much more than a birthday message. Because the Fever aren't just collecting talented players. They're building a culture. And that culture is attracting attention from the highest levels of basketball. What happens next could accelerate everything Indiana is trying to build. Or it could threaten to tear it all apart. Let me paint a picture for you. It's game night in Indianapolis. The arena is packed beyond capacity. 18,000 fans wearing blue and gold, many of whom had never attended a WNBA game before last season. The energy is palpable. Not just excited, not just loud. Desperate. Desperate to witness something special. Desperate to be part of a story that's being written in real time. Desperate to tell their grandchildren they were there when the Indiana Fever became legendary. This is what Sophie Cunningham is choosing. This is what she's fighting to protect. And if you think that decision is easy, you haven't been paying attention to how professional sports actually work. Let me show you what Sophie is walking away from. Expansion teams are coming. New WNBA franchises with pristine cap sheets and bottomless optimism. Teams that can offer contracts Indiana literally cannot match because of existing financial commitments. We're talking potentially double the money. Maybe more. A chance to be the guy on a new roster instead of the third option behind two generational talents. A chance to build something from scratch with her name at the center. For most players, that's an impossible offer to refuse. Financial security that lasts beyond basketball. A featured role instead of a supporting one. Legacy opportunities that might never come playing alongside two superstars, who will inevitably absorb most of the attention. Sophie Cunningham looked at all of that and chose Indiana anyway. But why? What could possibly outweigh the money, the opportunity, the chance to be someone's franchise cornerstone? I'll tell you what. Championships. Not the promise of championships. Not the hope of maybe contending someday if everything breaks right. But the genuine, realistic, tangible possibility of winning multiple titles with a core that's already proven it can compete at the highest level. Sophie Cunningham didn't come to the WNBA to make money. I mean, obviously she wants to be paid fairly. Every professional athlete does. But that's not what drives her when she steps on the court. She came to win. And right now, in this exact moment, the Indiana Fever offer her the best chance to do exactly that. Caitlin Clark attracts defensive attention that creates open shots for everyone else, and who benefits most when defenses collapse on Clark. The sharpshooters standing beyond the arc. Sophie Cunningham has shot over 40% from three during her career. That's elite. That's the kind of marksmanship that wins playoff games and closes out championships. But those numbers don't happen in a vacuum. They happen because Caitlin Clark demands double teams. They happen because Aliyah Boston commands attention in the post. They happen because the Indiana offense creates open looks for players who can capitalize on them. Take Sophie away from this system. Put her on an expansion team where she's the primary focus of opposing defenses. Those percentages plummet. She knows this. Smart players understand their value is contextual. They recognize when they're in a situation that maximizes their strengths while minimizing their weaknesses. Sophie Cunningham found that situation in Indiana. And she's not letting go. But the basketball reasons are only part of the story. There's something else happening in that locker room, something that cameras don't capture and press conferences can't convey. A bond that goes deeper than professional respect. And what these players have built together off the court might be even more important than what they've accomplished on it. Championships aren't won in arenas. I know that sounds counterintuitive. The games happen on the court. The buzzer sounds, the confetti falls, that's where the glory lives, right? But the real championship work. It happens in hotel lobbies at midnight. It happens in group chats that never stop buzzing. It happens in the quiet moments between practices when teammates become family. And the Indiana Fever. They've figured this out faster than anyone expected. Let me tell you what happens before every single game. It's not scripted, there's no team mandate, no coach pulling players aside and telling them to perform rituals for the cameras. Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston find each other. Every single time. Sometimes it's a hug that lasts longer than normal. Sometimes it's whispered words that nobody else can hear. Sometimes it's just a look, an acknowledgement that says more than any verbal communication could express. We got this. I believe in you. Whatever happens tonight, we're in this together. That's not performance. That's connection. And Sophie Cunningham has become part of that inner circle. Love bug. Those two words weren't just a cute nickname. They were Sophie telling the world that she belongs to this family now, that what they've built in Indiana transcends basketball statistics and contract negotiations. You can't fake this kind of chemistry. Teams have tried. Front offices have assembled supergroups on paper that should have dominated for years. They've brought together talented players and expected magic to just happen. It doesn't work that way. The Miami Heat learned this with their original Big Three. Despite winning championships, the early struggles exposed how difficult it is to merge elite players into a cohesive unit. It took time. It took sacrifice. It took moments of friction that nearly tore everything apart. Golden State's dynasty didn't happen overnight either. Those championship teams were built on years of shared experiences, playoff losses that stung, regular season battles that forged unbreakable trust. Indiana is accelerating that timeline. They're building bonds in months that normally take years to develop. And it all starts with authenticity. Caitlin Clark doesn't pretend to be someone she's not. Her confidence is genuine. Her competitiveness is unfiltered. When she celebrates big shots with visible emotion, that's not an act, that's who she really is. Aliyah Boston matches that energy with her own personality. Different style, same authenticity, same willingness to be vulnerable with teammates, same refusal to hide behind professional distance. Sophie Cunningham brings intensity that complements both of them. She's the enforcer who protects her teammates, the veteran presence who's experienced enough to provide wisdom but young enough to still grow. And then there's the rest of the core. Kelsey Mitchell, who's waited years for this moment, whose loyalty to Indiana through rebuilding seasons has earned her the right to be part of whatever comes next. Lexi Hull, whose selfless play creates opportunities for everyone around her. The ultimate teammate in a league full of players chasing individual glory. This isn't just a roster. This is a family. And families don't abandon each other when better offers come along. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to discuss. Families in professional sports get torn apart all the time. Loyalty only goes so far when millions of dollars are on the table. Friendships fracture under the weight of business decisions made by people who never step foot inside locker rooms. The Fever know this. They've seen it happen to other teams. And what they're doing right now, the Instagram posts, the public displays of commitment, the unified front they're presenting to the world. It might be their best defense against forces that have destroyed countless teams before them. Because there's a storm coming. And what happens in the next few months will test everything they've built. Free agency is a battlefield. Most fans don't understand what really happens behind those closed doors. They see the announcements, they celebrate the signings, they react to the trades. But the war itself, it's brutal. Agents whispering in players' ears about their market value. Rival teams sliding into DMs with promises of bigger roles and fatter paychecks. Family members questioning why loyalty should trump financial security. And the Indiana Fever are about to walk directly into that chaos. The CBA negotiations are progressing. Sources close to the discussions suggest a deal could be finalized within months. And when that happens, the floodgates open. Every team in the WNBA will suddenly know exactly how much cap space they have. They'll know what they can offer. They'll know which players become available and which contracts can be matched. And expansion franchises. They've been waiting for this moment with predatory patience. New teams don't have legacy contracts eating into their salary caps. They don't have existing commitments limiting their flexibility. They start with blank slates and bottomless ambition. Sophie Cunningham will be a target. There's no way around it. One of the best three-point shooters in the league, a proven winner who's already demonstrated championship-level performance. a player young enough to be a cornerstone of a franchise for years to come. Expansion teams will offer her everything. Money that makes her current contract look like pocket change. Starting roles instead of complementary positions. Marketing opportunities that come with being the face of a brand new franchise. And Sophie isn't the only one who will face these decisions. Kelsey Mitchell has earned the right to explore her options. After years of loyalty during losing seasons, she deserves to consider what else is out there. Lexi Hull will have suitors. Role players who do the dirty work are undervalued until they're gone, then suddenly everyone realizes what they were missing. Even Aliyah Boston, despite seeming locked into Indiana's future, will eventually face contract decisions that test her commitment. This is the reality of professional sports. No matter how strong the bonds, no matter how genuine the friendships, no matter how many Instagram posts declare undying loyalty, money talks. And money doesn't care about hugs before games or whispered encouragement or family dinners during road trips. So how does Indiana survive this? How do the Fever keep their core together when forces far more powerful than basketball chemistry are working to tear them apart? The answer lies in something that most franchises never figure out. Culture. Not the buzzword version that gets thrown around in press conferences. Not the manufactured, we're a family messaging that every team claims but few actually embody. Real culture. The kind that makes players genuinely want to stay even when leaving makes more financial sense. The kind that creates an environment so special, so unique, so impossible to replicate elsewhere that money becomes secondary to belonging. Indiana is building that right now. Every shared moment, every public declaration of commitment, every time Sophie Cunningham calls Caitlin Clark love bug or Boston and Clark exchange pregame hugs. They're constructing something that no expansion team can offer. Because expansion teams can offer money, they can't offer history. They can't offer the bond of having built something together from the ground up. They can't offer the chance to become legends in a city that will worship them forever. But will it be enough? That question haunts everyone connected to Indiana basketball right now. And the answer is coming faster than anyone wants to admit. We started this story with 2 words. Love bug. A birthday message that seemed innocent on the surface. Just a teammate wishing another teammate well. The kind of social media post that normally disappears into the endless scroll of content we consume and forget. But nothing about the Indiana Fever is normal right now. And nothing about Sophie Cunningham's message was accidental. She knew exactly what she was doing. In a league where player movement dominates every off-season conversation, where loyalty is treated as naive and self-interest is celebrated as smart business, Sophie Cunningham chose a different path. She chose to declare her intentions publicly, to silence the rumors before they could grow louder, to tell expansion teams and rival franchises that their money doesn't interest her. Because what Indiana is building cannot be bought. Think about where this franchise was just 2 years ago, struggling to fill seats, losing games that felt meaningless, waiting for anything to change the trajectory of the organization. Then Caitlin Clark arrived, and everything transformed. Sellout crowds became the norm, national television ratings exploded. A fanbase that had been starving for hope suddenly found themselves drowning in excitement. But Clark alone couldn't build a dynasty. She needed Aliyah Boston's dominance in the paint. She needed Sophie Cunningham's deadly shooting. She needed Kelsey Mitchell's veteran presence and Lexi Hull's selfless hustle. She needed a team. And that team is now on the verge of something historic. The CBA will get finalized. The financial landscape will become clear. Free agency will officially begin, and decisions that shape the next decade of WNBA basketball will be made. Indiana's front office understands the stakes. They see what's happening with this core. They recognize the chemistry that can't be manufactured and the culture that's being built in real time. Their job now is simple but not easy. Find the money. Make the moves. Keep this family together. Because if they succeed, we're looking at a dynasty in the making, multiple championship runs, a legacy that transforms not just a franchise but an entire league. Lisa Bluder saw it in Caitlin Clark years ago, that transformative quality that separates generational talents from merely great players. Sandy Brondello sees it when her team visits Indianapolis, an atmosphere that's become the benchmark for what WNBA arenas should feel like. The fans see it every single night, a group of players who genuinely love competing alongside each other. And Sophie Cunningham, she sees it clearly enough to bet her career on it. Love bug. Two words that told us everything we needed to know. The Indiana Fever aren't just building a team. They're building a legacy. And if everything falls into place, if the CBA works out, if the contracts get signed, if this core stays together through the storm that's coming, we might look back at Sophie Cunningham's Instagram post as the moment we knew. The moment a dynasty was born. Not with a press conference, not with a championship trophy, but with a birthday message between teammates who understood that what they're building together is worth more than any contract expansion teams could ever offer. The future of women's basketball is being written right now. And it's being written in Indianapolis. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started.